Good afternoon and welcome to the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for August 11th, 2025. Call the meeting to order, and first thing on agenda is the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement, which represents our dedication to instill land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. First order on the agenda is approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or additions, we can proceed. Seeing none, we can move on to approval of the July 28th, 2025 meeting minutes. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Carter, seconded by Councilmember Obi-Toppin. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the minutes are adopted. This evening, we do have a few people who would like to address the committee. We typically do that after the agenda and minutes, and or if we have employee appreciation. We don't have employee appreciation, so we'll do that now. I'm going to call on people's names. Everyone who wants to address the committee have 3 minutes, and we'll try and get everyone a chance to talk. So our first one is Andrew Boardman. Welcome. Yep. Make yourself
Well, I've
comfortable.
only been to St. Paul. I've never been over here before, so it's.
Well, welcome.
I'm Andrew Boardman with the ATU 1005. I'm the assistant business agent. I wanted to address this committee about Met Council boondoggles. We've all heard about the issues with rail extensions, and now we're going into a rail deletion. And this is another opportunity for the Met Council to either make a good decision or a bad decision, a decision that helps people or a decision that hurts people. We can go back and we can look at, I'm going to bring up the Louisiana Purchase, we like to call it. The Met Council decided to send $12 million worth of work on our light rail vehicles down to Louisiana to have work done that could have been done here. This contract should have been handled and done last year. Right now, we've received 1 train back from them, and that train will not be operational for at least a year because our people who you took this work from have to redo everything. That's $12 million of taxpayer money that was wasted because someone made the decision to send our work away, to change, instead of actually looking into it to see what we can do. So I want to give you guys the opportunity, and I know you can't make all the decisions, things go above you, but I want you to really think hard about shutting down the Northstar line. Instead, we should be expanding it. We should be expanding it to St. Cloud, make it more useful, expand it down to Rochester. That is something everyone can use. Not eliminating something because we didn't reinvest in it to make it worthwhile. It is still at pre-pandemic levels, and that's why it's not as useful as you guys would like it to be, and that's why they want to shut it down. So I implore you, don't let this be another boondoggle for the Met Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Is David Butts. Welcome.
So I'm Dave Butts, Vice President at ATU. So I wrote out what I'm going to say here. But like Andrew just got done saying, talk about taxpayer waste. You guys have been saying that $9 million in savings to shut down Northstar is completely wrong because, and I'll address it right here. So we're here to address the serious concerns regarding the potential suspension or shutdown of Northstar commuter rail. The fundamental question is, why would we consider shutting down a train service that, due to federal subsidies, is essentially free to operate for the next 9 to 10 years? Walking away from this opportunity would waste upwards of $100 million in taxpayer funds without even accounting for the additional costs or dismantling of the system, which would only place a greater burden on the taxpayers. This is not just fiscally irresponsible, it's a disservice to the public. What we need now is transparency, not smoke and mirrors. The public deserves clear and honest communication about the future of this transportation resource. According to the contract signed between Met Council and Burlington Northern, Northstar intended to operate 6 inbound and 6 outbound trains each weekday, with limited but available weekend service. That full level of service has never been fully restored since the pandemic. Instead of honoring the terms of the contract and giving the train a fair chance to rebuild ridership, service has remained limited, effectively sabotaging its potential success. Furthermore, in my opinion, there remains a concerning conflict of interest involving Mr. Zelli, who serves both as a chair of the Met Council and board member of the Jefferson Lines, a private bus company. His announced retirement on September 10th does not erase this issue or its implications. Now, we have gotten a letter from city managers stating that Jefferson Lines could very well be the heir to the shutdown of Northstar. So talk about conflict of interest, there it is. We respectfully urge you to consider the suspension of Northstar commuter rail, or reconsider, restore the full service that was once promised and give the public a chance to respond. Let us see what the ridership looks like when the train is operating at its intended capacity. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Treviskin? Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I too am here to speak about the Northstar and why it deserves adaptation and not abandonment. Today I'll show why we must preserve and reinvigorate Northstar, not wind it down. First of all, let's talk about mismanagement. Met Council as owner and steward failed to restore crucial services after the pandemic. Weekend and special event runs, key to ridership recovery, didn't return until late 2023, and regular weekend service is still absent. Across the U.S., peer commuter rail systems restored service quickly. Many even expanded and launched capital projects to strengthen long-term resilience. By 2021, Northstar became the lowest riding line among peers, yet its productivity per train hour was comparable. That proves the problem was neglect, not operational failure. Let's talk about ridership collapse and missed opportunities. The Met Council's own study explored restoration, extension, or replacement, but made no firm commitments. It essentially paused action rather than catalyzing recovery. Ridership fell from nearly 3,000 weekday riders pre-COVID to roughly 430 in 2024, while service cuts deepened the decline. Instead of revival, the council is exploring bus replacement despite train infrastructure already being in place and the fact that replacing it could trigger millions in federal repayment obligations. Any bus cost savings would take years to appear. And here's what they're ignoring. More employers, including the federal and state governments, 3M, Wells Fargo, Target, and Ameriprise in January are bringing their people back 5 days a week. They're calling workers back to the office. Restoring service to pre-pandemic levels now is crucial. That would capture that demand and spur ridership growth. Third, let's talk about leadership and trust. Public criticism of the Metropolitan Council has intensified. Legislatures and watchdogs have called it incompetent, with accountability questions amplified by the Southwest LRT debacle. By failing to restore service or adapt to new commuter patterns, the council is eroding public trust while other regions push boldly ahead with expanded transit. Finally, opportunity, not liability. We can stabilize and grow Northstar by restoring full weekday, weekend, and event service now. Extending service to St. Cloud as their own studies support. Adopting peer best practices, phased capital upgrades, targeted marketing. Leveraging strong productivity per train hour, even with lower volumes. Rebuilding public trust through visible, community-focused stewardship, not passive dissolution. Northstar's crisis is not from the line failing, it's from leadership failing. If the Metropolitan Council had acted swiftly post-pandemic, we'd be on the path to recovery. It's not too late. Let's demand leadership that restores, invests, and extends, not abandons. Preserve Northstar, not for nostalgia, but for a smarter, more connected future. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Renee Sapalia. Welcome.
So my name is Renee Sapala. I am a rider of the Northstar. I've worked at Xcel Energy since 2007 and actually moved out to the areas of Elk River, Big Lake starting in 2003. Initially, I rode the bus from Elk River. That wasn't reliable. Often standing room only, you didn't know which bus you'd get on, and I often had to drive to other park and rides to have more consistency. So replacing the Northstar with a bus service, even in the Ramsey area, is not a valid solution. You're also taking away a very reliable service from folks who live out in the Elk River, Big Lake area, which are the two biggest stops on the Northstar. We also get a lot of people from the St. Cloud area, including veterans who are looking to get to the VA and don't have another opportunity to get there. They take the bus from St. Cloud, they get on the Big Lake, they get on the train at Big Lake, and they ride it all the way down to the VA. Once, of course, they have to get to the light rail. When the Northstar originally was talked about, it was a big hallelujah moment. I attended initial informational meetings and was excited about this option. I've rode the train regularly since inception, except for when I was working out at the Monticello nuclear power plant for a while. When we decided to move from Elk River Otsego to Big Lake, one of my criteria was that we were close again to the Northstar, knowing that I have worked for Excel for 18 years and wanted an opportunity to be able to get back downtown should my job change and require me to come back downtown, which it has. I've had friends on the train that have become like family, including members of the BNSF staff. I really can't fathom a life without the Northstar because it has become part of my life. I am one of those people who will be the first person to say that this is a valid option to get back and forth to the Twin Cities. I don't like that we have not restored service back to pre-pandemic levels. I believe if you were allowed the Northstar to go back to pre-pandemic levels, you would see ridership increase. There are many folks that are nurses at either HCMC or the VA that are unable to ride the Northstar because of its current schedule and would ride the Northstar given a schedule that resembled what we had pre-pandemic. When the Northstar was built, it was put into service because the Highway 10 and the Highway 94 corridors were way behind on their current design. Even with the new Highway 10 construction and completion of that here in November, that design is over 30 years old. I was 15 when I saw the design on paper and in computer, and it has not changed except for the addition of roundabouts instead of stoplights. That puts Highway 10 corridor still 30 years behind what it should be. While 94 has had increased construction, we are also looking at another corridor that has not been upgraded to handle current commuters, including the area in Rogers with the 101 flyover and the lack of the change to the 94 on-ramp to go eastbound on 94. All of this is going to be increased when you take away the Northstar and make people drive anywhere from 25 to 30 miles from the areas of Big Lake and Elk River to get to an option if they no longer have the Northstar. So again, the suspension of the Northstar is not something we should be doing. We should be increasing it, bringing it back to pre-pandemic levels, and allowing at least a year, if not through the end of the contract, to see what that brings back. I think you guys would be very surprised at what is going to happen. And a lot of times they talk about BNSF being the martyr. Metra and Sounder both run on BNSF tracks. If they can make it work, we should be able to make it work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. have one final person who signed up to speak, and we'll open it up if there are other people who want to as well. It's Vanessa Spring.
Vanessa Lesperance.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Vanessa Lesperance. I've been a bus operator with the Met Council for 12 years. Not only that, I am a long-term union member, whether it was myself or my father worked for the Met Council for 34 years. He also worked at Northstar as well as the union. I donate to COPE every month or every payday, and COPE made it possible to have that $430 million of dedicated funding possible. And so it's a little hurtful to find out that the service I rely on is going to be canceled. I bought my house in February, sold it with the sole purpose of it being off the Northstar. Their bus service is not reliable in that area because 610, you cannot drive on the shoulder. Highway 10 is under construction. And my son goes to a charter school in Coon Rapids, and his way of getting to school, along with his other fellow students, is the Northstar. They actually have a school bus that stops there every morning to pick up kids off the Northstar to bring them to their charter school. As well as De La Salle uses this service to bring their kids to school. My best friend also bought a house in February along with me in St. Cloud. She makes $21 an hour with 3 kids as a single mom. She relies on the Northstar to be able to get to Bloomington when she has to go in the office. She would not be able to do that without the Northstar service and reliability.
Thank you. And I know a few additional people have come in, so if there's other people who would like to address the committee, I would like to open it up just to make sure everyone had a chance to speak. All right, thank you all for coming and commenting. We appreciate it. Now we're moving on then to reports, and our first is MTS Services Executive Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, council members. In light of a long agenda, I did not prepare a report, but I would be happy to answer any questions committee members may have.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
That was a very quick report. On to Metro Transit General Manager Kim Darris.
Thank you, Chair Barber, committee members. Like Executive Director Carlson, I also did not prepare a report given the length of tonight's agenda, but would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Likewise, questions or comments? All right, we're very efficient this evening. So then we are on to our agenda items because there is no TAAC report. There are no items on consent. So we'll move first into business item 2025-178, which is Northstar Commuter Rail Suspension and Replacement Service Plan. And we have Adam Harrington here to present.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. I'm Adam Harrington, the Director of Service Development. And the business item before you is the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the suspension of Northstar Commuter Rail service pursuant to all applicable contracts, agreements, easements, and licenses, and approves enhanced bus service in the Northstar corridor within the 7-county metropolitan area to be incorporated into Network Now. And I have just a few background items. I believe most of you were on the committee of the whole, and some of this is a repeat, but I think it bears repeating for the audience. Northstar ridership last year, and at the height was about 2,600 daily rides. And this last year, we're at about 430. Now, when Northstar opened, the forecast for 2025 was that we'd be at 5,600 rides on the current alignment between Big Lake and downtown Minneapolis. So it never did really come that close to achieving the original forecast. And so today we're here to talk about some of the cost expenses for that, including the subsidy per ride, which in 2023 was $116 per ride each direction, which means it's about $230 per rider per day, compared to a commuter bus, which is about $16. In 2025, the operating expense is $18.6 million, and we're expecting that number to go up just with the insurance costs in the next year or two, so that's likely going to climb even at the current status level it is today. Service levels, I was there November 2009 when we opened Northstar Commuter Rail, and we had 12 daily trips on weekdays, inbound and outbound, and 6 weekend trips, as well as event service, as was mentioned earlier this evening. Then in 2020, as the change in behavior was guided by the COVID pandemic and the guidance on travel, we reduced that to 4 daily trips, 2 inbound and 2 outbound weekdays, and no trips on the weekend. And then in 2023, we increased that to 8 trips daily, 3 in the morning inbound and 3 in the afternoon outbound, and then a reverse commute in each direction, as well as serving some special events. One of the challenges with Northstar is we have not been able to provide additional service beyond the total, which would be 72 weekly trips back in 2019, all the way back to the beginning. We have not been able to add midday service or more frequency or more weekend service on a regular basis beyond special events. So it's been a challenge for us to be able to do that, given that BNSF is operating a high-frequency Class 1 railroad in this corridor. But over the past couple years, since 2020, when we had many changes, not just with Northstar, but with dozens of routes across the entire metropolitan area. In fact, we suspended 59 routes across the whole metro area. Most of those were commuter express bus routes into downtown Minneapolis or downtown St. Paul. And over the course of the last couple of years, as we work with our customers and communities and travel pattern evaluation and downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul employers and U of M to really assess the change in travel patterns and a number of community engagement events, which I'll talk about in a minute, we developed the Network Now framework, which really guides how we would invest in our system out to 2027. And while we've made some great improvements on frequency of service and a lot of those core areas, and we've invested into Metro Micro service across the region, we also officially discontinued 50 Commuter Express bus routes at the same time, recognizing that there is that change. And even though there are many employers coming back, there still remains quite a bit of flexibility in people's schedules. So we're not seeing people coming back to work 4 or 5 days a week. We're seeing them come back to work in downtown 2-3 days a week. And so it's a substantial difference in our market. So this map on the right represents the number of routes, which basically touches our entire system for Metro Transit that have had some adjustments that are part of Network Now out to 2027, including the transitways, frequency improvements, strengthening our midday service in many areas, including express corridors, and discontinuing 50 routes. Leading up to that, in 2024, we had a very robust community engagement process that helped inform all of these changes in the design of Network Now. You can see here we had 25 community events. We had 35 municipal and county briefings, including Anoka County and communities in that area. We had postcards and a number of different means to get the word out and had a lot of individual engagement with our customers across the region. So of the 1,500 or so comments we got back, we received about 151 from the Anoka County service area, and 39 of them were related to Northstar. And no surprise here, what we heard was more bus service in the Anoka County area in general, more frequency on Northstar, more frequency on Express Bus, more all-day service in the midday, and Extend to St. Cloud. So barring Extend to St. Cloud, we're able to do that in many corridors, and including this replacement bus service, even though it does not go all the way outside of the 7-county metro at this point. So here is the zoom-in map of the Network Now network showing the routes that would have some adjustments and improvements. This was endorsed by the council in March 2025. And so there are a number of changes here, particularly between Anoka and Northtown, that you can see we've made some route improvements. And we'll be evaluating those in light of Northstar changes as well, because at this point, Northstar changes weren't contemplated within Network Now. So we have an opportunity to learn from everything we've heard from our Northstar customers and the communities that Northstar serves, and think about how we may want to make adjustments here. So in March 2025, we began Northstar transition planning. And I'll mention again, Metro Transit is restricted to operate regular bus route service within the 7-county metro area by statute. MnDOT has authority to provide service outside the 7-county metro area. And so we built this concept plan that we brought out for engagement that included a significant service improvement within Anoka County, a route that would serve Ramsey, Anoka, and Coon Rapids stations and directly into downtown Minneapolis. That would operate every half hour during rush hours and hourly all day, as well as improvements to Route 827, which is currently called 852, to serve Fridley Station. So we had a lot of contact with our customers. We talked to a lot of people. We've got a lot of survey responses back. We had 2 in-person meetings in Fridley and Anoka. We had 1 virtual meeting. We had an onboard meeting. And we talked to customers ad hoc throughout the course of that month between early April and early May. Some of the themes that we heard are different depending on the travel patterns. Many of the existing Northstar riders really wanted to continue to have a focus on rush hour only service, but really would like more frequency. The midday service is an attractive option to many people. And we got a lot of good information about a desire for weekend service, as well as a wider span of service that customers would like to see. And of course, we heard from our Big Lake and Elk River customers who are disappointed that we did not include that service in the plan that we presented to the public. So our service plan for Metro Transit includes new Route 888 that would again operate every half hour for a fairly wide span of time in the mornings on weekdays and in the afternoons, run hourly both directions between downtown Minneapolis and Ramsey, Anoka, Coon Rapids stations, as well as Saturdays and Sundays, 3 trips inbound and 3 trips outbound. We are suggesting a little bit different schedule than what we had on Northstar Commuter Rail so that someone could arrive in downtown Minneapolis mid to late afternoon and have a return trip in the evening, 7 and 11 p.m. So these are the placeholders we have at this point for this Route 888. The 827, the former Route 852, or current Route 852, does currently operate hourly between Anoka and downtown Minneapolis. This change was actually part of Network Now by changing the routing to go straight down East River Road into downtown Minneapolis, as opposed to coming down East River Road to Fridley and then getting on 694 and 94 to downtown. So this was a route change that we had contemplated within Network Now. One of the differences is we added more service going into downtown in the morning and out of downtown in the afternoon, every half hour between Northtown and downtown Minneapolis. And then Saturdays, it does operate hourly frequency. The travel time comparison here shows the difference between Northstar Commuter Rail and making a transfer at Target Field versus a direct trip to the core of downtown Minneapolis. And you can see from the table on the right-hand side that the travel time is very similar for Anoka, Coon Rapids, and Fridley, a little bit longer for Ramsey. And I'll say that our travel time estimates for Northstar to LRT is an ideal connection scenario. It's basically a 5-minute transfer between arrival for Northstar and up to light rail. So it's not maybe the average, but that's what the framework is for how we're comparing Northstar to bus. And of course, you can still get to all the same destinations by connecting with LRT and Orange Line and all the other bus routes in downtown Minneapolis with that 1-seat ride into downtown. This plan includes 379 weekday trips with all the frequency that we've added compared to the 40 trips that are currently scheduled on Northstar Commuter Rail, or even compared to the 72 trips, which would have been the maximum we could operate within contract with BNSF. So the planned bus service, again, in 2025 includes currently Route 805 between Anoka, Riverdale, and Northtown, Route 852, which will turn into 827, Route 850, which provides Commuter Express from Foley Park and Ride in Coon Rapids all day to downtown Minneapolis, the Route 860 to St. Paul, and new Metro Micro service, which will begin in September this year. In 2026, added to that will be the Route 827, as well as the 888, and of course, Transit Link is available across Anoka County. At this point, I'll say we've had some good conversations with Sherburne County. They are interested in working with MnDOT to try to identify service improvements that they might contract to provide service from either Big Lake or Elk River Commuter Express to downtown Minneapolis. So we're waiting to see the results of that conversation with MnDOT. For every major change, we do a Title VI analysis to evaluate the impact to communities of color and low income, the service equity analysis, and a fare equity analysis, because there's a fare change right now. Northstar has a premium fare rate attached to each one of the stations, whereas Commuter Express Bus has one rate, that's $3.25. So this analysis shows that there's not a disparate impact for fares, but for service. We do see the potential for impact, and that's because we have new service on East River Road. And again, I mentioned that East River Road was included with Network Now. When you look at the entire system, there's no potential for disparate impact, but when you add one route at a time across the whole system, it shows up as a potential for that. So in evaluating this and the whole package, we think it's still a good investment to move forward with in the sense of the corridor as well as how we invest in the region. You can see here on the table on the right-hand side the result of the service equity analysis and the fare equity analysis. The numbers in the chart should be 0.9 or higher. So that's our threshold for disproportionate burden, disparate impact, and you can see where they land. They're very close. And again, that's specifically related to that map that you saw on East River Road, where those services increased or essentially replaced from 15 years ago when we used to operate on East River Road. So the recommendation from a Title VI standpoint is to proceed with this service change. So again, the proposed action stands before you for the suspension of Northstar Commuter Rail service and replacement of enhanced bus within the 7-county metro area. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Adam. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of detail because this is a very important decision for the Met Council. I do have a question regarding offloading the service and the plan for that, specifically for Big Lake and Elk River. There are, as was mentioned, MnDOT could play a role in offloading service. Are we working with them, or how are we working to offload, to potentially offload this service to other providers or other entities?
Yep, Madam Chair, Council Member, we actually are working with MnDOT on what kind of service replacement options there would be for the Big Lake and Elk River commuter park and rides. And I know, as I mentioned, Sherburne County is interested in that, so we'll be awaiting further dialogue with MnDOT on how they want to proceed.
Okay, and then on the page for the existing service, the Big Lake map showed a Northstar link. Can you elaborate on how that was working or how it would work?
Yes, Madam Chair, Council Member, Northstar Link is a bus service that was introduced after, I think, 2010, after Northstar had been operating for service to connect from St. Cloud to Big Lake Station. They scheduled a trip for each trip, bus to train, and they do that today. Right now, they carry about 25 riders per day that connect at Big Lake and then return the other direction in the afternoon. And I believe St. Cloud Metrobus is not going to be pursuing continuing that service moving forward at this point. But of course, we continue to have dialogue with them.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Additional questions? Councilmember Lee-Stockton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for this. Forgive me if I missed this. Do you have numbers on how much would this, you spoke about insurance. I need to jump, do you have specific numbers for that? Like how much would the insurance cost if we keep I'm assuming it's going to keep going up, correct?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Council Member, I believe at the previous slide deck, we were looking at about $400,000 a year or more starting next year.
Okay, and if I heard you thank you for that. And if I heard you correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. The budget right now for the Northstar is looking at 18.6 million, but with the routes, with the bus routes of 888 and 827, it's costing about 3.5 million, correct?
Right. Madam Chair, Council Member, we're looking at about $3.5 million for the service enhancements that we're talking about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments?
Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Adam, for this presentation, and again, a nice overview from our council of the whole meeting. You know, and just, you know, I know this is really hard, and I want to just thank all the people who had the courage to speak tonight, because I know public speaking is hard, so we're hearing your stories, and we know that even with Network Now, when we were looking at all of the routes that we had to look at throughout the system, and as Adam gave an overview, over 50 of those routes had to be changed, and we heard a lot of comments too from those folks. So change, we know, is not easy, and it is life-changing. We understand that. And with that, though, you know, too, when you do go back to 2004, prior to, you know, opening of the rail route, projections, ironically, were pegged for 2025. So when you look back at the Kimley-Horn study that was, I think, MnDOT commissioned, we're not even close pre-pandemic from meeting about 50% of those travel ridership expectations. So the pandemic ripped apart all of our lives, and let's not forget that. We are not recovered on our regular routes, and that's why Network Now especially, I think, was important to right size, especially with travel shed changes. But it's very difficult when you look back at what the ridership projections were supposed to be, and even pre-pandemic, when we were thinking, you know, we were at our peak and potentially growing for Northstar, we weren't even close. So I think, like everything, the pandemic really shook things up. And Met Council is a piece of this bigger puzzle of transportation and transit, not only in the region, but up to Big Lake. So, you know, I can really appreciate the real concerns that were raised tonight. But as a Met Council member, I'm trying to make sure that we're doing our job to put together service that will continue to serve and maybe serve better in some ways, not always. There will be lost service for some, but we are trying to step in and really work with local communities, with the community members, to make sure that they have ridership, or I should say ridership options, that will still connect them into the system. So I'm very supportive of that. And the more we can do to make sure that we work with those partners, especially in Sherburne County. I had a conversation probably a year ago with the Sherburne County Commissioner, and they don't want to abandon their constituents. There are people at the legislature who've taken up this issue recently, and some of those legislators live in this area and are trying to figure out ways to supplement and put in new service. And that would have to be with MnDOT outside of our 7-county area. So we hear you loud and clear. And at the same time, just with what we've got to work with right now and what we're looking at for the future of this corridor, I think it is right to end Northstar here within the next 6 months and get it right-sized and work very hard to make sure we bring service to the people of this corridor to the best of our ability, like we're doing with other corridors in the region. So I do support this action tonight, but I can hear your concerns, and I'm happy to meet with all of you outside of this meeting if you want to do that. And that's where I'm headed with my vote.
Okay. Additional questions or comments? All right, I'll just add on that. First of all, thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone who came and spoke tonight. We do know this is a challenging decision. This is where Metro Transit is a transit agency. This was something that we tried. There were a lot of circumstances that have played out over the last few years that have complicated things, but we do have a responsibility to the taxpayers and also to our riders. And that is ensuring that there is as much transit in this corridor as we think we can provide, and in the most successful manner possible, but across the region. And with Network Now, we did have to make some tough decisions then. This one, I will admit, for probably everyone around the table, feels different because it's a bigger thing. And we know how important it has been for as many people as it has been. So thank you again for coming out and speaking. Thank you for council members for all your comments, both at the committee of the whole and tonight. I really appreciate, feel like we've had a good thorough dialogue about all of this, which is always important, especially when it comes to big decisions. So with that, I'll give a final call if anyone has any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-178.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Obisakin. Is there any other, oh, pardon me, Councilmember Carter. Sorry. I just heard it from over on that side. All right. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Adam. All right, on to business item 2025-168, which is Metro Transit Supplemental Security and Trip Agent Services. And we have Matt Broughton and Antoinette Brasson here. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Council members, my name is Matt Broughton. I'm the Assistant Director of Bus Transportation Administration, and I'm joined tonight by Antoinette Brasson, Assistant Director of Field Operations, and we are presenting business item 2025-168, Metro Transit Supplemental Security and Trip Services Contract 24P301, with the proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize the Regional Administrator to negotiate and execute Contract 24P301 with Intercon Security for Supplemental Security Officer and Transit Rider Investment Program Agent Services in an amount not to exceed $57,400,000. I'd like to put this in the context of Metro Transit Forward, our strategic framework. So most of the services described in this presentation fall under the experience strategic priority. And I have circled in red the signs of success. So those are the measures we hope improve with these services. So that we hope these services lead to an increase of riders who feel safe while riding and waiting, an increase of riders who report experiencing clean vehicles and stations, and a decrease in the crime rate. The main way we are trying to affect change through these metrics is through our Safety and Security Action Plan, and all of the services described in this presentation originated out of action items in that Safety and Security Action Plan. Contract 24P301 provides supplemental security and trip agent services, and there are really three kinds of services under this contract that I'll be describing. The first will be supplemental security at light rail stations and transit facilities. The second will be an end-of-service roving patrol at transit facilities. And the third would be contracted transit rider investment program or trip agents who provide support on buses and trains. Our request for proposals was for a 2-year contract with a 3rd-year option, and the number of locations, the baseline staffing hours, and the staff hours may vary over the course of the contract depending on our need. Supplemental security started as an action item in the Safety and Security Action Plan as a pilot at 2 stations in the fall of 2022. It is currently provided at 9 locations. Contract 24P301 will provide supplemental security at 16 locations. The number of personnel range from 2 to 4 security officers, and the span of service ranges from 20 to 24 hours. To compare the current services, that's what you see on the left there, along with the current and planned metro lines. So those are the 9 locations we currently have services. And then on the right, I've tried to give an indication of what services will look like under the next contract. So it's kind of a complicated map, so I'm going to try to describe things in a little detail. So anywhere where you see a yellow square, that is where we are going to be having static services. So that would be 2 to 4 security officers stationed at a location for 20 to 24 hours. So kind of working maybe north to south and then west to east. We'll be providing services, static officer services at Brooklyn Center Transit Center, Franklin Avenue Light Rail Station, Lake Street Midtown Station, I-35W and Lake Street Station, Uptown Transit Station, and 46th Street Station. And then looking along the green line, so moving west to east, we'll have static security at Snelling Avenue Light Rail Station and Central Station. The green hexagons that you see are what we're calling roving LRT security officer services. So that would be a pair of adjacent stations that are going to be served by 2 security officers who will both patrol the platform and ride the light rail between the stations. So the first location we'll be providing those, actually the hexagons are kind of plotted over each other, but will be at both Warehouse Station and Nicollet Mall Station. We are also providing that roving LRT service between Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. And then all along the Green Line from Hamlin Avenue Station to Dale Street Station. So that's Hamlin and Lexington as one pair and Victoria and Dale as another pair. The other kind of service we'll be providing under this contract is an end-of-service roving patrol. So those are indicated by the pink circles on the map. So this is a new initiative addressed at visiting selected transit facilities at the end of the service day before the facility closes. So often these are facilities that have an indoor passenger waiting area that needs to be secured before the facility closes. This will be provided initially at up to 12 locations with the flexibility to add or change locations if the demand for services change. Trip agent services. So trip agents are responsible for inspecting fares, assisting riders, and upholding the rules for riding. Of course, they also provide first aid, administer Narcan, and provide information about our services. Our current trip agent cohort is a combination of full-time and contracted staff. And Contract 24P301 will, in addition to providing those trip agent services, will provide security officer support for trip as needed. Summary of the procurement process: on May 18th, the request for proposals was released. On June 18th, the proposals were due. The evaluation criteria were the proposal quality, the qualifications of the proposer, qualifications of key personnel, the service delivery plan, qualifications of the proposed subcontractor, and price. The proposal from Intercon Security was found to be the most advantageous to the council. The Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity assigned a Metropolitan Council underutilized business goal of 12% for the solicitation. OEEO determined that the firm being recommended for award has met the MCUB requirements for this project. A little bit of background on Intercon Security. They are the largest minority-owned and operated security company in the world. A few of their current clients have listed here. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, including the PATH Transit System. They have over 1,000 staff on that contract. The San Diego Metropolitan Transit System with over 190 staff. The Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, over 250 staff. And that was the agency that would actually receive this year's American Public Transportation Association Bus Security Award. In addition, their current clients include LA County Metro and Sound Transit. So once again, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Contract 24P301 with Intercon Security for supplemental security officer and transit rider investment program agent services in an amount not to exceed $57,400,000. With that, I will take questions.
Very good, thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this report. It's great. Can you just tell me, has Intercom, am I saying that right? Intercon Security been doing work in this region already? Have we used them in the past? Are they being used by other agencies in the region? Do you know?
So to my knowledge, we have not used them in the past. I am not as sure, although I can get back to you about presence in the region.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you. Or maybe even in other regions. And the reason I'm asking is if they're here and established, I know they've got a complement of people that they'll be hiring right away. Do we know, will they have to hire people if this is one of their first bigger accounts that they're getting in this region? I'm just curious where the employees are coming from.
Yes, Madam Chair, Council Member, that's a great question. So even with respect to the current services, the planned services are going to be an increase, and so whoever was awarded the contract was going to have a hiring task. Intercon has, as part of their proposal, did discuss retaining incumbent personnel, and so for incumbent personnel who meet the qualifications of the contract and pass their background screening and have the endorsement of the council, if applicable, they have committed to employing them under this contract if the contracted employees are interested.
And Madam Chair, thank you. And just remind me again, who had the original contract on this? I should know, I'm on management.
Yep, so 22P 123 is with Allied Universal Security Services.
And so Allied will no longer hold the contract, or will they still have a piece of the contract and this will be supplemental to even them?
Yes, Madam Chair, Council Member, that's another good question. So there will be a period when we are targeting operating both contracts simultaneously. So when we will be operating services under 22P 123 and 24P 301 to manage the transition between the two contracts. That was the primary purpose for the amendment to 22P 123 that was passed earlier this year.
And I know I'll hurry up. And so Allied will eventually transition off. We won't renew that contract, but then we'll be with Intercon going forward, at least for the foreseen time.
Madam Chair, Council Member, that's correct.
And again, just so everybody's been trained up with Allied, There will be an agreement then between Allied and Intercon to help those people transition that already have been trained and are part of the team to stay with us. Is there any guarantees for them?
So, Madam Chair, council members, as part of their proposal, they did express interest in retaining incumbent personnel. They have successfully transitioned security contracts at other agencies where they have had a high turnover of incumbent personnel. But as of yet, there is no kind of guarantee of a certain percentage of staff working under the current contract transitioning to the new contract.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, last point, and if, I don't know if this is going to management, but I think that's really important, at least for me, to know what that plan is. And I know there will be transition time, but these are people that have been trained up, they have real lives and real families. And my understanding too is this is not a union position. So I'm just trying to make sure that for all the reasons, for the people working currently, that they can transition into something that is fitting what they've been knowing that they've been doing and can transition successfully, and hopefully pay and scale and all that is still good, and whatever benefits they may or may not be getting. But also just retaining all those relationships, because they're out there really understanding the system. We've had great experience and results. And so anytime there's a change like this, it just, understandably, we're gonna be doing this, but it makes me nervous just that we get all those people who are really, I think, key to the success of all of this in place with Intercon when they get here. So that's my only comments on this.
Yes, and Madam Chair, council members, if I may, so we are inclined to agree. You know, of course, we welcome all incumbent, like all qualified personnel to apply, and especially if they're qualified incumbent personnel, we have a vested interest in kind of maintaining those services, and that is one of the reasons for the overlap between the two contracts to allow for a transition of services between the two providers.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions, Councilmember Chambliss?
Yes, very good questions, Councilmember Johnson. That answered a lot of questions for me. I'm glad that we have a strong transition plan, and to have those services operate concurrently, I think will help things be smooth. This continues our efforts to increase the experience for our transit riders and helps us to execute, you know, our safety and security plan, which we all reviewed during the committee of the whole. So I'm looking forward to continuing to improve the service experience for our customers.
Absolutely. Additional questions, comments? Councilmember Cameron?
Two questions there. So first, did Allied provide a bid on this contract? And the second is not directly related, so this is not asking if Allied did not score well on these criteria, but which criteria for Intercon did they perform above other applicants on, where there was a demonstrated success in terms of the evaluation criteria provided?
Madam Chair, council member, at this point, I might ask if Jody Jacoby could come up, just because I am unsure which pieces of information about the procurement process we're able to share.
Sure.
Madam Chair, council member, so the four evaluation criteria are quality, qualifications, experience, and price. And they are of equal importance. At this time, what can be shared is the name of the proposer and the information that's been in the business item. Is there anything that specifically stood out that you could share with Intercon that the evaluation panel strongly recommended?
Sure, I think the the thing that struck most panel members when they were reading Intercon's proposal was their detailed plan to scale up services to meet the staffing requirements. This is a large investment in supplemental security and trip agent services, and their detailed plan to both manage the transition, achieve those staffing levels, and manage the service itself.
And then you can't answer who, in terms of other applicants, you can't answer who else?
Madam Chair, council member, we can, Minnesota Data Practices Law for proposal allows the name of the firms that propose to be public. So you could say the other names of the other proposals that were submitted. I don't have them in front of me.
Yes, so I don't want to trust my memory off of this, but I will say that Allied did submit a proposal.
Madam Chair, Council Member, we had 7 proposals submitted for this project, and we can get that information to you after if you're interested.
Madam Chair, to the point.
Councilmember Johnson?
Madam Chair, I think that would be nice in our staffing reports on something this big a scale. I know in other committees, we get everybody who applied and it's, you know, responsible bidder and all of that, and there's criteria, but I think that would be helpful just to know again who in the region and what scope is applying as we're looking at, you know, the one that is highly recommended.
And no, you can, to my fellow council members, if you want to have some of those discussions, sometimes we can't have those discussions in public, and you can always feel free to reach out to Jody ahead of the meeting and get some additional detail. All right, additional questions or comments? Councilmember Osman.
Thank you very much. I just want to have one question about the MCAP goal, which is 12%. Is that the commitment number also, or?
Madam Chair, Council Member, what is public at this time is affirmation that the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity reviewed their submittals, and they have confirmed that at minimum, they have met the 12%.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Okay, I'll just add, I think this is great because what I appreciate the most about it is when we started with the TRIP program, it was the TRIP program and we had some supplemental security. Now we're looking at how can we, update and change and refresh it, and with some of the roving support or security, as well as the end of service. Like, we're seeing where we saw, okay, we've got this program, it's working really well, but we still have some needs, and I think that's really refreshing and really nice to see, and kind of goes to what we talked about last week with the safety and security action plan, and it being really a living process. So thank you very much for all of that. All right, if there's no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion then to approve business item 2025-168.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss, seconded by Councilmember O'Saki. Is there any other discussion?
I ask
Councilmember
one
Cameron?
question, just for clarification. I apologize for missing most of the presentation. Is this, just for clarification, are we going to see an increase, for those with static sites, will we see an increase in hours of service for trip agents?
Madam Chair, Council Member, so for static sites, those will be supplemental security officers. It'll be between 2 and 4 officers who are going to be at a location. So even some of the current locations where we have supplemental security officers, say Franklin Avenue Light Rail Station, is going to see an increase in the number of officers who are supporting that station. And then, of course, for the sites, some sites where we currently have services, say, for example, 46th Street Light Rail Station, we're seeing an increase both in the number and the span of the service. So each site will receive between 2 and 4 security officers and service between 20 and 24 hours. And I also want to underscore that over the course of the contract, of course, those needs may change, and we have the flexibility to adjust the staffing levels, the locations, and the hours to meet that need.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, on to business item 2025-180, which is 2025 Transit Information Modernization. And we have Bree Grant here. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Bree Grand. I'm a senior project administrator in Metro Transit's Transit Information Department, here to present on contract 24P213, Transit Information Modernization, which is a multi-package software contract. I had the opportunity, along with some colleagues, to present an informational item to this Transportation Committee on the software procurement back in April, during which time our proposals evaluation phase was taking place. And I'm now back post-evaluation for business item 2025-180 with a proposed action that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to negotiate and execute contracts 24P213 A through D that will provide transit information software in an amount not to exceed $25,608,547. This procurement includes 7 packages for various software and services. Some of these packages are for already existing systems that the council currently uses. For example, our real-time prediction engine software or our rider alerts manager system software, which have impending expiring contracts. And some are for new systems aimed at enhancing transit information for riders. The Transit Information Department mission is to support riders with accurate, customer-friendly information. And the goals driving the procurement effort for these systems reflect that mission. Those goals include providing complete and accurate real-time departure predictions that increase our riders' confidence, up-to-date, dynamic, and accurate detour information available to customers through multiple channels, robust and specific rider alert information that effectively alerts riders to disruptions and service changes, a multimodal, customer-friendly trip planner that provides a complete overview of transit options for riders, improvements to data and system integrations, reducing the need for council oversight and maintenance, and improve ways of working for the staff who use these systems on a daily basis for their work. These goals also align with our Metro Transit Forward strategic framework. A lot of the work that the Transit Information Department does supports improving the customer experience. And one of the measures of success under the experience strategic priority is increasing the use and availability of transit information data and tools. Subsequently, investing in transit information improvements that improve trip planning and real-time information for customers is also identified as part of the action plan supporting that framework. Some of the more specific, concrete examples that we aim to realize with these systems include being able to actually reflect real-time detours in our customer tools, such as actually showing the detour routing in our trip planner and reflecting that routing in trip plans that are provided to customers. Also want to be able to reflect real-time departure, our next trip predictions that account for that detour routing. So when customers access next trip information via our website or at stations that have a real-time sign or audible annunciators, we want information that reflects potential changes in departure predictions based on that detour data. Another benefit is the ability to display on-demand transit in the trip planner, such as our Metro Micro services. An additional benefit is automating rider alerts so that customers receive information about alerts more quickly and our staff efficiency is increased versus some of the more manual intervention that occurs now. An additional benefit is being able to utilize new tools in the Service Development Department that will analyze past automatic vehicle location and automatic passenger counter data to provide enhanced business intelligence capabilities for future service planning. The request for proposals for all of these systems and services was developed last year in partnership with other departments, including procurement, service development, and information services, among others. The team also worked with the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity to review MCUB opportunities for this procurement. And OEEO concluded that no MCUB goal would be set based on their research and analysis of this software. The request for proposals was released in Q4 of last year. The council received 12 proposals and reviewed and evaluated those proposals during a multi-phase evaluation process during the first 2 quarters of this year, with our evaluation panel providing recommendations in late June. Pending council approval, we aim to execute the contracts this quarter with an intention to establish 7-year contracts with vendors, and then begin the implementation of these systems, which we strive to complete by late next year. So again, the proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize its regional administrator to negotiate and execute contracts 24P 213 A through D that will provide transit information software in an amount not to exceed $25,608,500 $547 as followed. Corbato LLC for package A in an amount not to exceed $3 million. Arcadis for packages B, D, E, and F in an amount not to exceed $10,608,547. Swiftly Incorporated for package C in an amount not to exceed $10 million. And Reflections Data LLC for package G in an amount not to exceed $2 million. Thank you, Madam Chair, council members. I'll be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, so it'll be available through the real-time signs at the stops, right, key stops?
Yes, so Madam Chair, council member, good question. Yes, so one of the goals of this procurement is to improve the information provided to customers for things like real-time departures by being able to actually reflect data that comes from detour information. We don't currently have the capacity, the ability to do that, and so being able to leverage that new data would allow us to provide more accurate next trip departure information on those real-time signs through the audible enunciators at those signs as well, on our website, through our next trip via text service, all those different channels.
Okay, and you also have it available at your website, of course, and isn't there also an app, would it also be available via the app?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, we do have an app. It connects directly to our website where that information is provided for next trip.
Okay, and, okay.
Okay, additional questions, comments, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. It is really good to be able to look forward to these enhancements for all of us, for system providers as well as for our users. And I am assuming that real-time means real-time in particular, so that users are well informed. So I'm looking forward to it. I do recognize that this is a large set of contracts that may well be integrated and interdependent, and that we're looking at a long period of time for these packages to work for us and together, assuming then that there are also metrics that will assess how well they are doing, if they're meeting our expectations, and that if not, there are ways of our being able to remedy that, such as exiting contracts and replacements. And I just want to hear some assurances to that effect, because it is such a large investment and such a number of different parties working together.
Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, thank you. There will certainly be reporting and analysis of metrics for the different contracts that we're implementing. I would refer to Jody regarding the ability to exit contracts.
Well, I mean, if they're working great.
Right.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Council Member Jody Jacoby, Chief Procurement Officer, and to specifically address your question, we have software templates that we utilize that have even more enhanced opportunities to look at the performance metrics, and then also provisions to get out of the contract quickly based on not getting what we assumed we were getting or what was proposed in the package. This contract also was structured differently. There was piloting of numeric criteria scoring, which the council is going to be moving forward with requests for proposals that will get to some of your questions, with really putting weight and analysis in those areas that are important to us. Additionally, this contract is for 7 years. And normally our contracts are structured with 5 years, but because this is a big investment and a long-term investment, the term is 7 years with renewals up to 10. And we do have specific language in our software contracts. So certainly keep looking at metrics, outcomes, service, and that's all part of the package with this contract.
Thank you. Would assume so. It's helpful and comforting to hear that.
Okay, Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, well, I really appreciate the information here. I got to tell you, if you're living over in South Minneapolis, knowing where detour rerouting is coming and available is very important. I was talking to my daughter about it. The bus literally comes between myself and Dr. Carter here. I can look out my window and say, wave at people going by right there, but I don't catch it there. And so I asked my daughter, so where are we catching it? So I think, anyway, I think this is very important, especially with how fast things are happening out there.
Additional questions, Councilmember Cameron?
My first question is really around the integration with Metro Micro, and what does that look like in terms of providing services?
Sure. Madam Chair, Councilmember. So right now, when a customer plans a trip using our trip planner, they are not able to get Metro Micro service incorporated into their trip plan itineraries. One of the goals of this procurement with the new software that we'll be implementing is to be able to actually reflect that as an option in trip plan itineraries.
Councilmember Cameron?
And then kind of building off of that around integration across service areas. So one, I want to make sure and understand that as of right now, like the detour, the real-time detour information, that is not, when we're talking about updates to service delivery and what people can see at the kiosks, it is not a live look at buses happening, buses coming. It is a look at prediction modeling of buses coming and predictions of detours. And so, I think in terms of next steps is getting to that point where we're integrating services between what software platforms we're using on buses so that they can communicate directly with our user interfaces, whether it's at a kiosk or on the website. And I know that is probably much more complicated than I can even imagine in terms of integrating all of those different systems to talk together. But it is, that would always be the goal, because I think, it minimizes frustration for riders when that's as accurate as possible. And again, it's still predictive, and so it's not going to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. And so the closer we can get to that and moving towards a model like that, the better off we will be.
Councilmember, thank you. Yes, I agree. That's main goal of this procurement is to move in a direction that allows us to get information to riders that is more accurate in more real time, exactly for the reasons that you outlined.
Leslie can correct me if I'm wrong, but a number of these technology updates that we're doing right now, whether it's some of the technologies on the buses and the garages, we've had a number of them. The goal is to get there, and that's to have everything talking to each other. So yeah, that is the intention. But, yeah. All right, any additional questions or comments? I'll say this is just great too. So because even when we talked about the safety security action plan presentation last time, is so much about the user, the rider experience. This is a big part of it. And it really, especially for people who are new to a transit system, trying to figure out where things are going, to get information like this is really key. So it's a big part of really how we're going to continue to build back and expand our transit service. So, all right, final comments. All right, seeing no additional questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve business 2025-180. Moved by Councilmember Tony Carter. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, on to business item 2025-192, which is the Flying Cloud Airport 2040 Long-Term Comprehensive Plan review, and we have Jill Whiting here to present.
Good evening, Madam Chair and council members. Switching gears a little bit here, looking at airports now. So my name is Joe Whiting here. I have my MAC colleagues, Michelle Ross and Eric Gillis, if there's any questions after the presentation, but we'll jump right into it. So first, as I like to do with all these aviation items that come to the front of the board and various committees, is that where is Met Council's role in the aviation process? So unlike our surface transportation systems, the airports are found in, our rules, our regulations are found in state statute, not federal statute. And so State statute guides the Met Council to develop what's known as a Regional Aviation System Plan, and I'll be coming back next time to talk about that actually. And through that aviation system plan, one of the key elements of those is what's known as long-term, airport long-term comprehensive plans, which we are reviewing here today. Those are required through state statute, and those are required to be consistent with regional policy and to conform to our regional aviation system. That is part of the review we are doing here today. It's key to note here that these plans, we don't have any financial implications in these plans, as these are funded and procured by MAC themselves, and so these are our goals here are to review these for consistency and then to let MAC adopt them later on. So the Flying Cloud Airport 2040 long-term plan, a couple slides here to kind of go into some details here. But real first, so long-term comprehensive plans, they're 20-year planning documents. So they, for the Flying Cloud plan, that are going under the 2040 planning horizon. So a little different than our 2050 plans, but that is why that is. These really project aviation activity out through that planning horizon, identify needed projects at the airfield to support the projected activity and the existing activity at the site, and also to identify basic financial considerations for those projects, and then also to consider environmental implications as well from those projects. One caveat here is, as similar to a city comprehensive plans, airport long-term plans aren't really in depth in the environmental element. They really look into inventory, and then once that environmental review phase kicks in, which you'll see where that goes in next time, that'll be really when those in-depth findings for environmental impacts come in for these plans. The airport itself, so Flying Cloud is located in Eden Prairie in the Southwest Metro. It is actually the second busiest airport in the regional system by an MSP with about 120,000 operations in 2021. It is a primary reliever airport for MSP, so you see a lot of business jet traffic and a lot of general aviation and flight training going on at the airport. It's about 300 or so acres, again in that southern part of Eden Prairie, and it is an airport that has an air traffic control tower and has various runway instrument systems to ensure that jet traffic and other aircraft traffic operates safely at the airport. So when MAC begins these processes, they really look to set out those goals for the airport long-term plans to be able to meet specific MAC goals for the airport and for their system as a whole. So at Flying Cloud, the three goals here really looking to enhance airport safety, looking at ways to improve and or at least preserve or improve operational capabilities at the airport for the existing aircraft using it, and also look at ways to promote the financial sustainability of the reliever airports within the MAC system. So just a little interest on MAC, they operate 7 airports in the region, MSP, and 6 relievers, and so the relievers are a big aspect of that system, and ensuring that financial sustainability is a big key of these plans. As I mentioned, one of the big aspects of these 2040 long-term comprehensive plans is looking at that activity forecast. So through this process, they are outlined out through that 20-year planning horizon or 2040. So you'll see these started in 2021. So a lot of time these plans take quite a bit to put together. And so the planning process really began in 2021. And so that's when you project your activity out there from that. As you can see here from these numbers, we have seen quite a bit of decline in operations at reliever airports in general in the region and the country. And you'll see that it's no different in Flying Cloud. However, in the last decade or so, we have seen a rebound and recovery of those operations at Flying Cloud specifically. We don't anticipate that steep recovery to continue out to 2040, but we do anticipate there to be a steady recovery and growth in air traffic activity at the airport through 2040. A key aspects of these forecasts too is kind of thinking about what is going on with these forecasts that's really potentially looking at that, how that implicates those planned facilities at the airport. And so we'll see here one of the big features of this activity forecast set the growth in traffic and change in traffic types to a lot more jet aircraft utilizing this airport. And we really, part of this activity forecast, understand why. And so really we've seen a lot of that as one of the reasons why is the location of the airport. So again, Flying Cloud is located in the Southwest Metro. And so you see a lot of business jet traffic utilizing that airport because of its location in the region. Really close to a lot of those large corporations and corporate housing and things like that. We're also seeing a growth in potential jet traffic. We'll see in one of the projects coming up here is moving that air traffic control tower to be able to accommodate future hangar growth, which will be focused mostly on jet activity at the airport. So really this airport is becoming a large hub for corporate jet traffic and other things like that in the region. And we're actually going to see it be more than up to 50% of traffic in the whole region will be coming to Flying Cloud, again, for those reasons outlined through the planning horizon. So what does that look like on the airfield itself? So this is an image of the preferred alternative of the airport. You can see here as we think about that safety aspect here. So one of the bigger projects you'll see in the main runway. So those kind of yellow the yellow marks on the main east-west runway there is what's called EMAS beds, engineered material arresting systems. And those are really safety enhancements to ensure that any aircraft that if ever would overrun the runways are caught in those safety beds, and so they don't actually overrun the runways. They're caught in these EMAS beds. That's a large part of this project. This plan is at expense. You also see that movement of the air traffic control tower to ensure that large hangar development on the south side of the airfield. Those large purple buildings there. Additionally, there's also other work, including a new fuel farm, additional hangar development to the north, and a new connection to Pioneer Trail on the north side there of the airfield. And overall, these costs are projected to cost at least $134 million through the life of the plan. It is key to note that those are current dollars, so those are estimated in current dollars, and likely as you see these come moving through in CIPs in later years, those costs will escalate with regular cost escalation of projects. So that's kind of a baseline of the expectations of the development at the airport over the next 20 years. One very large key aspect of a lot of these airport plans, I'm sure you're all aware, living by an airport, is the noise aspect. And so a key aspect of Lead Believers is that new noise contours are modeled for that 2040 activity period. Noise contours really are what's called DNL, or day-night sound level. That's a cumulative impact of sound impacts that someone living near an airport may experience from air traffic flying near and over their home. It's what the FAA utilizes in all national airports, and really what our partners at MAC and here at the council, we really got to follow when we think about noise impacts at the community. There's a handy little chart here on the side here I'd like to point out here, just kind of the level of what we're talking about. I think people think of a lot of air traffic as very loud, but as you can see here, something like a Cessna, which is a small general aviation aircraft, is very similar almost to like a lawnmower or dump truck driving by your house. So we may think of these be outrageously loud sometimes, but really these kind of graphs really, I think, put some of this in perspective, that flying cloud is not MSP, right? You don't have large commercial jets flying out of this airport, so you don't really have those big impacts as you would at MSP. What that looks like on the ground here, so this is a graphic here that shows the change in DNLs, those day-night sound contours on the ground actually. The dotted lines are what's expected to be growth by 2040, and the solid lines are what's there today. So you see there is some growth in that DNL contour line here, and a key number here is 60. So 60 is used for planning purposes, and that's kind of the noise impact you expect from those impacts, and 65 is where we consider mitigation to be something that would be put in place for potentially impacted properties. However, we see here by 2040 that 65 DNL contour does not leave the airport boundaries at all, and they leave that 60 planning consideration contour barely just starts leaving the airport boundaries. And so we don't anticipate a lot of noise impacts from the existing or the proposed or the potential projected forecasts through 2040. Another big aspect of these plans, just like any other comprehensive plan in the region, is that engagement aspect. And MAC has a really robust and thorough process they do to ensure that the community and the airport users are both being taken into account as they develop these plans. You see here, there's quite a significant amount of meetings taking place. So 14 total public meetings throughout the planning process. MAC, as they do with every regional airport and MSP, set up what's known as a stakeholder advisory panel, which meets frequently throughout the process to review key milestones to the plan. It includes Met Council staff, agency staff, local partners, and also airport tenants as well to review this process as it goes through the process. Additionally to this, MAC meets with their own planning development and their own commissions throughout this process as well to update on that and receive feedback. And then also they include what is a required public comment period. As you can see here, that was done earlier this year, about 45-day public comment period. They received about 20 or so comments, most of them about aircraft noise. However, 20 or so comments is about typical as what you see some of these smaller airports with a little less interest in some of these plans maybe. It's also be noted here that we have gone through the TAAC process, and this is obviously beyond that. Generally support for that process, and these were approved unanimously through that process to today. Real quick before we end it out here, I want to talk a little bit about that relationship to regional policy. So as we mentioned, it's that consistency aspect that we're looking for with those regional policies, and then finally that conformance with our regional system. And so the outline plan does not really change the operational parameters of the airport. The runways are where they are. They're not changing. There's safety enhancements, some other capability enhancements to the airfield. However, that's not going to change the aspect of the airport, which today is a minor airport and will continue to do so. We don't see, there's a lot of large projects on that airfield that are going to be improving those safeties, but there really isn't any regional concerns about any of these projects. Potentially, those projects connecting to the region, to the roadway system and potential park impacts, those will be worked out with various partners to mitigate those impacts, but not really regional in nature. And so really for this plan, we found out this does conform to our regional system and it is consistent with our regional policy. One aspect here I just want to note is we are still reviewing this through that Thrive lens. It's because this plan did begin in 2021, so when Thrive was still enacted. And so the next long-term plans you'll see in the future for St. Paul, Anoka Blaine, airports like that will be switching over to Imagine 2050. But today we're really focusing on Thrive. And really what this regional airport is doing is really enhancing our economic competitiveness. As I mentioned, this airport is likely to become one of the larger hubs of corporate jet traffic in the region, and obviously supporting our regional businesses with that access and amenity is a huge part of why they're locating in some of these areas of our metro and considering to enhance their businesses as well in the future. Just real quick on the schedule here. So we're wrapping up our consistency review. So this month will be, after today, we'll be going to the full council for approval. And then finally after that, then it'll go back to the MAC's process to be adopted. Following that adoption, MAC will then move on to their environmental review period. As I noted, that'll tentatively scheduled to begin in 2027. And then after that is done and approved by the FAA and various partners, then you'll start seeing some of those projects that you see in this plan today move into that capital improvement plan, which we will then see again when we come through in our annual review process. So with that said, I'd open it up to any questions. As I've mentioned, we got some of our MAC partners here.
Thank you, Joe. Councilmember Tyrone Cutter, then Obasaki.
Yeah, I had a question. I was looking at your chart and the A320, because you were moving pretty fast. Is that typical? Is that a typical size? Is that like the average size of jet? Because you said it was a business jet, so is that an average?
Madam Chair and council members, so the A320 is a commercial jet. So generally business jets are going to be smaller. They're think of they had the engines kind of above the fuselage, and they generally have maybe 10 to 15 occupants at max. Whereas A321 would be a commercial jet with
Okay, so where would the business jet fit? You're saying it's comparable to the Cessna? Would it be above it?
I would say, Madam Chair, it's a little higher than that Cessna. Yeah, those sound levels are generally in between that. It's a jet turbine engine, so it'll be a little louder than a propeller airplane, but generally not nearly as loud as those larger commercial jets that you see taking off MSP.
Okay, well, I just want to thank you for a comprehensive plan and an positive effect it's going to have on the Eden Prairie, so I appreciate that. So, the reason I asked you about that, because I know the noise levels, of course, are becoming a bigger and bigger question, and it's something that I definitely have heard about the impact or alleged impact on people living in the area, so.
Yes, the sound is a very big aspect of a lot of what the MAC does, and they've got a lot of voluntary noise abatement programs. So because of federal rules, you can't tell someone they can't land or take off from a specific airport if it's a public use airport. But they do have voluntary noise abatement measures. So think there's a guide that for each of our regional airports that kind of, each pilot who operates out of that, has to read this guide. And then generally they adhere to these guides and lines as well. They're voluntary, but generally they're here too, and they do reduce the noise.
So as it grows, that those noise impact problems are going to grow, and
Madam Chair and Councilmember, so we do anticipate some growth in those impacts, but we do still see the greatest impacts to not be leaving the actual airfield itself. And so generally those residences around there won't really see much of a big change in the noise impacts, but there will be a growth for sure with more activity. But we still see it within planning horizon as not being beyond the greatest impacts are not beyond the actual airport itself.
Okay.
Councilmember Obasaki.
Thank you, Chair, members. Thank you for this, Joe. I'm a big airport guy. You touched on the safety. Thank you very much. I just question about the runway. So you don't plan on extending the runway? What you talked about? Are you adding security features or enhancements or what?
Madam Chair and council members, so there is a state statute, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, that state statutes are really what drives a lot of airport development in the metro specifically. Yep. And one of those state statutes notes that any airport that's a minor airport, so as Flying Cloud is, cannot have a runway beyond 5,000 feet.
Okay.
And so today we're currently at our 5,000 foot max. And so these EMAS beds, really what they're doing is ensuring that the aircraft that use the runway today, if there is any sort of issues, they won't, fly off into a neighboring neighborhood. They're going to hit those EMAS beds and it'll catch them before there's any disaster. So it's a big improvement, I think, to this airport that will really help, I think, the comfort of users actually using it to be sure that if they do have an issue, that they're not going to, have a bigger issue.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Someone who drives that road right there, I'm really glad to hear this. It makes me very, very happy.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Cameron, then Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and to our MAC partners for bringing this forward today. So a couple of questions. First, we're talking about the expansion of commercial usage. Could you expand a little bit more on, I think we're in the long-term comp plan, we're talking about an increase of overall service. Could you talk about the existing uses outside of commercial jet usage for private business purposes or whatever? I think we tend to think of a lot of reliever airports as hobby airports, and this is not the case with Flying Cloud. So if you could talk a little bit about current usages outside of commercial and how that will shift, predicted to shift over time.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Cameron, that's a good question. So yeah, one of the key aspects here is, as your point of hobby airports and things like that. So each of our regional relievers play a different role, and they're all relieving MSP as per state statute to kind of defray those congestion issues at MSP, so you can utilize these airports. And so Flying Cloud is really becoming kind of that base of that corporate business jet activity. And it isn't quite commercial jet, right? You couldn't just you couldn't buy a ticket and walk down to Flying Cloud and hop on an airplane and fly off. But generally, it's those larger corporations that maybe have a hub in the area that maybe their CEOs or other executives aren't going to potentially fly to St. Paul and then drive all the way across town to the Southwest Metro, so they'd rather fly in here. And so we already see that activity here, and we've seen it grow over the past 20, 30 years as that business kind of concentration grows with it. And so really what this plan is looking to do is to ensure that this airport is serving those growing needs out there as we see them already happening. And so we're looking to serve those existing airport aircraft types, and then also to enhance it to make sure that those aircraft types, more of those can potentially be based here and utilize this airport to support those businesses as they grow more in the Southwest. And so if that answers your question, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, now I have a follow-up to that. Just out of curiosity, would an entity, I'm not sure on the terminology here, semi-commercial, use Flying Cloud like a NetJets or I can't think of the name of the company, but it's like the
like a
equivalent.
charter almost or something?
Yeah, where you can book it, but it is still a private jet. They kind of fill up the plane and then, I can't think of what that company is called. But
That's where it comes in.
Madam Chair, council members, everybody. My name is Eric Gillis. I'm the Director of Airport Planning. To answer your question, yes, for NetJets and alike, this airport is used for on-demand charter service. So it can be a NetJets, but there are other types of companies out there that do ride sharing and fractional ownership of corporate jets.
right, yeah. Yeah, because it is, I think there's new companies cropping up with that ride-sharing model for private jets. Then my next question, I think, because this is such an important issue, and I think everything that comes in terms of long-term planning for the airport is, the number one response that we get is noise. And so I didn't see it called out on the list of engagement, but was the NOC engaged in this process? And could you talk a little bit about that? Sorry, I know I'm looking at her because
We should have came up at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Michelle Ross. I'm the Director of Stakeholder Engagement with the Metropolitan Airports Commission, Chair and Commissioners. The Noise Oversight Committee was not specifically engaged on this, as their primary role is really related to MSP and noise around MSP. However, the City of Eden Prairie maintains an advisory committee to the airport, and it was brought to that committee on several occasions.
And then can I?
One more then to Councilmember
Yes.
Johnson.
this is not a question, this is just a comment that I want to, we do get airport business from time to time, and I just want to thank Joe for his support. I know that we don't have a deep bench at the council that covers aviation, and so he's really risen to the occasion, provides a lot of support to the MAC, to our, all of our services in terms of liaisoning within entities within the council and then outside of it as well. And so I just wanted to call out all of the work that Joe does on this and that he's really become an aviation expert within the council, which I can say there's been a learning curve there because I think we started around the same time.
Yes.
And so it was, I don't know, what did we do? And so he's really done a lot and become an expert on it. So thank you, Joe.
That's a worthy comment, so thank you. All right, Councilmember Johnson.
I'll pass, except to just say you guys do a great job at the MAC. And when we say we, it's not the MAC Council, it's we, the MAC, that's proposing their plan. So just so everybody knows whose roles are what. And, in addition to MSP, which is, I think, in this region, taken for granted a bit. But this airport is so important to our region and state's economy. And we've all gotten the noise complaints, but a lot of that is the runway shifts that are going on at the MSP airport too. So I just want to thank all of you for your hard work. Appreciate the comp plan and look forward to the implementation.
All right, any additional questions, comments? I'll just let you all know Flying Cloud has one of the coolest air shows, like in the summertime, and I can sit on my patio with all the cool things. It's fantastic. So I think it's in July most of the time. I think it's July, so well, I think we've passed this year, but it is really cool. So anyhow, with that, if there's no additional questions, entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-192. Moved by Councilmember Cameron, seconded by Councilmember Overstocken. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, on to business item 2025-208, which is a grant agreement with the Board of Regents for the University of Minnesota Washington Avenue Bridge Suicide Prevention Barriers. And we have Nicole Clark here. Welcome.
Hello, Chair and council members. My name is Nicole Clapp. I'm the grants manager for the CD MTS Finance and Administration Unit. And I'm here to present business item 2025-208 to authorize a grant agreement with the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota for the Washington Avenue Bridge Suicide Prevention Barriers. So a little background, in the 2025 legislative session, the legislature allocated $2 million for a grant in fiscal year 2026 to the Board of Regents of the U of M for the design and construction of pedestrian enclosures and suicide deterrent barriers on the Washington Avenue pedestrian bridge on the Twin Cities U of M campus. This project could include a new railing system, improved integrated lighting, surveillance, signage, and related site and utility improvements. The money may also be used for improvements to existing temporary barriers on the bridge. And the funding for this grant was allocated by the legislature from the Transportation Advisory Board's active transportation portion of the regional sales and use tax, which was authorized by Minnesota State Statute 473.4465 Subdivision 3. So specifically, the action before you tonight is that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a grant agreement in the amount of $2 million with the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota for the design and construction of pedestrian and suicide deterrent barriers on the Washington Avenue Bridge. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Cameron? Then.
So, this particular project is very important to me. In my day job, I work with the South Asian community, and unfortunately, we had some families impacted by suicide off of this bridge. And so this has been a project that the university has pursued, I think, for several years now, through a number of different avenues. And it's wonderful to see that something is finally happening. Since that time and working with the family in 2023, we've had, unfortunately, additional student suicides. And so, it's never soon enough, and we've lost lives in this process. And so I'm really happy to see that something is moving forward, and that I think for many of the families, I know some of them had an opportunity to attend the bill signing with the governor a few weeks ago, and that this is really meaningful for them. And certainly the family that I worked with views this as a legacy to the tragic death of their son, that at least no other students are able to use this as a way to end their lives. So really, really grateful to see that this is moving forward and the partnerships that came together to make this happen.
Thank you,
All right,
Sharon.
thank you, and with that, I'm going to actually turn it to Executive Director Carlson, and then I'll go to.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a note that this is awarded from the TAAB's share of active transportation funds. In discussion about this topic at TAAB, there is uniform support that this project be funded in advance. I think some members of TAAB objected to the process, that it was just directly allocated by the legislature rather than it going through the TAAB process. You know, it'd be great to have a chance to select this project for funding, was kind of TAAB's, you know, through our regular process. With that said, TAAB did understand that the legislature took action and the council will comply with the law. However, members of TAAB requested that it not be brought through the TAAB process at all. So usually an action like this would come through the TAAB recommendation process and then the council would take action on it. In this case, we're bringing it straight to the council. Just wanted to point out that facet of it to Transportation Committee members, but I'll bookend that with, and TAAB is excited that this project is advancing and will be completed. There's also in law $6 million appropriated from Hennepin County's transportation sales tax to the U of M. We will continue our work to triangulate those sources together so that this improvement can be implemented as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Councilmember Lusaka.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Cameron. As she said, in my community, the West African community, suicide is number one cause of death, and it's truly very sad. But I was happy to see that there are steps being taken. Just like my day job too, is the sort of things I talk about. I'm just going to say you probably don't have the authority to answer this. As great as this first step is, I hope we see it as a first step. And I hope that we can focus on preventative measures. Just because we barricade a bridge don't mean there are other means. And again, I'm not saying you can authorize that, but I'm hoping it's a step forward. And people will, listen about working on preventative measures. I think that is key. Again, awesome job. It was a bill that I followed. I was pushing my own bill, but great to see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion to approve business item 2025-208.
I'll move. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Osmond, second by Councilmember Obusakin. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And that concludes our business for tonight. I think the first three items should proceed non-consent to the full council, and the last two can go on the consent agenda. Everyone agrees? All right, because we are running a little bit long, I'll just let you know that we're going to move the workforce update to our next meeting, because we only have one information item on that agenda, and we do need to get through some of the budget overview. So we're going to move ahead to the 2026 operating budget overview. We have Kristen Prescott and Heather Kiesel here.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Kristen Prescott. I'm acting finance director for Metro Transit.
And I'm Heather Giesel. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration for Community Development and Metropolitan Transportation Services.
So tonight we're going to go ahead and present the 2026 preliminary transportation operating budget. Oh, I got it right. We'll start out with an overview of the budget development, how we develop the budget, and then we'll go over the transportation division budget as a whole, and then I'll present Metro Transit's 2026 operating budget, followed by Heather presenting Metropolitan Transportation Services. So the Transportation Division operates, administers, and coordinates public transit services in the Twin Cities. Metro Transit includes regular route and express route, micro transit, as well as the metro lines, including light rail and bus rapid transit. And then Metropolitan Transportation Services, or MTS, includes contracted bus, special transportation services, and transit link, to name a few. So this is our budget development schedule. Between May and July, we're busy gathering data and preparing the budget. In August, we present the preliminary budget here to the Transportation Committee, which we're doing tonight. And then Wednesday, we'll come back and present again to the Met Council. In October, we'll come back and present the capital budget. And then the unified budget will go out for a 45-day public comment. After the 45 days, the operating budget is adjusted based on any public comment, and the council will adopt the final draft budget, and in December, we'll adopt the final budget.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, you can.
So we will be back for this CIP here at this committee in September. The CIP will go to the full council in October. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, Met Council is committed to being good stewards of public resources. Every year, we develop the operating and capital budgets in accordance with Minnesota Statute 473-125, which basically authorizes the regional administrator to prepare an annual budget for council approval. So some of the guiding principles that we look at when developing the budget, we look at council policy and action, including labor agreements, fair policy, and target fund balances. We also look at state legislation and forecasts for motor vehicle sales tax, or MVEST, state appropriations, and then the metro area transportation sales tax. Metro Transit also does fuel price hedging, and that's to minimize the impact of price fluctuations. And then we also look at our sales tax investment and reserve policies. So our budget framework considerations, we look at all of our discretionary expenses from the department directors, factor in the revenue service sources, and then we roll it up into our budget. We look at service plans, including bus and rail, and then we calculate our service-based costs. We also look at ridership forecasts and average fare per passenger, and that helps develop fare revenue estimates. All right, so this is our council ridership. You can see in 2020 where COVID hit, the big drop there. And then we are slowly, steadily increased our ridership. You can see in 26, our ridership will remain consistent with our 2025 forecasts in hopes of it exceeding that ridership due to recent return to office mandates. So it's just kind of a wait and see. And then this is our 2026 transportation budget at $1,051 million. On the left-hand side is our revenues, and you can see the key categories there are going to be sales tax and MVEST. And then on the right side is our expenses. You can see bus in blue, and then we have light rail and transportation, special transportation services. Those three make about 89% of our expenses. So. All right, so that kind of concludes our overview, and so we will go into Metro Transit, and Leslie would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair Barber, council members. Just before Ms. Prescott continues to walk through the Metro Transit specific slides, I wanted to take a moment to put our proposed budget in the broader context of Metro Transit Forward. So Metro Transit Forward is our strategic framework. We developed this as really a shared collective vision with our employees, with our riders, starting in 2023, recognizing this is a very pivotal time for Metro Transit. We're experiencing a lot of change. We're growing our system. We're adding more service. That means bringing on more people. We also have the addition of the metro area sales tax for transportation, which you'll see show up in the budget here in the coming slides. So Metro Transit Forward is our framework for summarizing our collective purpose, which boils down to 6 words: connecting people, strengthening communities, and improving lives. And our proposed budget, as you'll see tonight, really would allow us to advance our mission across our 3 strategic priorities: employees, experience, and service. It supports us continuing to expand service, improve the customer experience. You already heard some examples of that in actions earlier tonight with the transit information, expanded supplemental security and trip agent services. And it's also helping us prepare for future expansion, including the Green Line extension opening in 2027. And before I hand it back to Ms. Prescott, just wanted to acknowledge it takes many staff from across Metro Transit to develop the budget and get our operating budget to this preliminary proposed stage, including many people in this room who I appreciate being here tonight and are on hand to help answer any questions you might have. But I want to give a special thank you to Kristen Prescott as well as Ruth Crowlane on our budget team. They've really stepped up this year following the retirement of Ed Petrie and other staff turnover at Metro Transit to ensure that this presentation is in such a good place tonight. So with that, Madam Chair, I know Kristen will take it from there.
Thank you. All right, so we will jump right into our budget. You can see Metro Transit's budget is at $833.3 million. What you're looking at here is our operating sources for 2026. Over half of our operating sources comes from sales tax and invest, so it's quite a bit. This is an historical trend of our operating sources. You can see in the light blue that our sales tax increase as we fund our investments to advance our strategic priorities that Leslie was talking about. MVest in yellow has remained consistent over the 5-year period. And at the very top on 2026, our general fund reduced from $33 million down to just 1.8 in 2026. This is our operating uses for 2026. On the left-hand side is our uses by transit mode. You can see that bus makes up about 74% of our uses, so a big chunk there, followed by light rail. And then on the right-hand side is our uses by category. And you can see salaries and benefits. That makes up about 69% of our budget providing service to the public. And this is a historical trend of our operating uses. You can see that the majority of our operating budget historically goes to fund salaries and fringes. Employee costs have grown steadily due to inflationary pressures, union contracts, and an increase in budgeted FTEs for a number of strategic priorities, including service expansion, safety, and cleanliness. This is another look at our budget, and this is by area, comparing the 2025's adopted and amended budgets with 2026. Some of the key areas of growth here, you can see on the far right. Bus transportation has grown by 223 FTEs for operator hiring increases as well as the growth of our trip program. We decided to break out trips so you could see how quickly that program's growing. Engineering and facilities and rail operations, those have increased due to the continued hiring and anticipation of the Green Line extension service opening in 2027. And then the other areas of growth are related to staffing increases for improvements in customer experience and employee support. So for our 2026 operating budget, we've had several targeted investments that drove our budget. Our preliminary budget increased 15% over 2025. You can see we've listed them here for like Network Now for $30 million. We're expanding our trip and supplementary security, increase in Green Line extension as well as wage increases. So the next few slides, we kind of wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into some of these budget drivers. That's part of our strategic initiatives. So the first one is public safety. You can see in the dotted line, you can see that in the dotted line that public safety has grown steadily. Our FTEs in police have remained pretty level. That's the blue But we are investing more in recruiting new officers as well as retaining the current workforce. Growing trip program, that's in the red. You can see we were at 0 in 2023. We're up to 162 FTEs in 2026 to increase visible official presence on the system. Green Line in 2026 alone will have 6 times the presence of 2025. We're increasing investment in supplemental security contracts, and that's including Allied or Intercon and the Downtown Improvement District. The next one is our cleaning, repair, and maintenance. We are improving our customer experience by investing in the implementation of Metro Transit's cleaning and repair standards. You can see in the bar chart that our budget increased from $220 million in 2025 to $250 million in 2026. Some key investments are funding to support maintenance of staff recruitment, staff to support cleaning on bus and rail vehicles. We're funding the EAMS implementation, and then also additional staff to expand public art programs to deter from vandalism and graffiti. Our next budget driver is Network Now. Network Now's vision is to grow ridership, enhance mobility, and meet travel needs. Our budget's increased from $25 million to over $35 million, an increase in platform hours of 6%. 157 FTEs are being added in 2026, bringing the program total FTE to just under 298 since 2024. And by the end of 2026, more than 50% of Network Now will be implemented. And then our last budget driver, Green Line Extension. Green Line Extension is the largest infrastructure project in the state of Minnesota. In 2025, we had 136 FTEs in our budget for LRT operators, staff to maintain the system and facilities, as well as administrative support. We're adding 105 in 2026. In addition to hiring, system testing is underway in advance of revenue service. So that's all I have for Metro Transit. I can open it up for questions or comments before Heather takes the wheel.
Any questions or comments so far? And I know it's all a lot to digest, so if there are questions and comments down the road, either Kristen or Heather are happy to answer.
Absolutely.
Yes, as they come to you. Yes. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay, so transitioning over to Metropolitan Transportation Services. Kristen already touched on what those are. So special transportation services, including Metro Mobility and Metro Move, Transit Link, which does include some microtransit, van pool planning, and contracted fixed route. So just a couple of highlights. Bus service levels are budgeted at 100%, as well as special transportation services. We're also budgeted at 100%. Cost increases are driven by higher salaries, a couple of additional FTEs, service contracts, and cost allocation increases. We're continuing to evaluate assumptions in ridership and travel demand, and special transportation services transition to a state forecasted program this year. Just a couple of notes on Metro Mobility. So ridership is at about 89% as of 2024. So we have budgeted ridership this year at 91% of pre-COVID levels, but we still continue to budget our service at 100%. So moving on to some more details. This is a really high-level overview of our contracted services budget. On the left-hand side, you can see special transportation services. We're seeing a 5% increase over last year, so $193 million compared to $133 million in 2025. Gas is down slightly, $3.55 a gallon, as opposed to $3.58 last year. And just for note, every 25 cents in fuel price increases roughly $1 million in fuel costs. But we'll keep an eye on fuel costs throughout the year. It's an area that we've been seeing some savings in our quarterly management reports, if you have seen those yet. Or actually, you guys will see it Wednesday. So yes, we're seeing some cost savings in fuel. Bus and fixed route are showing an increase of about 18% over last year. 23% of this is in fixed route or bus fixed route, and then there was actually a decrease in the van pool levels. This is driven by higher provider expenditures, higher contracted rates, and then those increased hours that we're seeing. We're assuming diesel at $3.10 a gallon, which is down from $3.51 last year. And then the regular fuel that I already mentioned with Metromobility and special transportation services. TransitLink is up 57%. This is mostly a result of continuing to increase service zones for microtransit. I'll touch more on that on a future slide. So moving on to the special transportation operating and revenue. Most of our general or overhead expenses have held pretty flat to 2025. The main story in MTS is ridership, service levels, and transit provider costs and fuel costs. So unlike Metro Transit, you won't see many costs towards salary. Most of our costs are for contracts with those different providers of our services. So just a little bit more detail on Metromobility. As I mentioned, just over $139 million. The state general fund appropriation is now a state forecasted program as of July 1st. So we're no longer relying on new appropriations every year. This will be a forecasted program that we can rely on from the state. From the feds, there's about $3 million of federal funds in the Metromobility budget. That is from the DHS waiver services for Metro Move. And this is the first year since 2021, I believe, that we have not used any federal pandemic money. So the last of that was spent down in the first half of this year before the state assumed the cost on July 1st. We have about $6.5 million in fares. Again, we're projected at about 91%, has been around 89. We'll continue to track what that looks like. A planned use of reserves of $11.5 million. And then, as I mentioned already, on the expense side, one of the differences you'll see here is less salary and benefits. We're budgeted at 100% of service, hoping to continue to see that ridership grow and want to be conservative in our expense estimates. Let's see. Fuel and materials are just over $13 million, but about 90% of our budget for Metromobility is direct service for fuels and contracts. So 2026 is also the second full year of Metro Move, so we're continuing to evaluate that program, adjusting the budget accordingly as we better understand the demand and ridership and costs of that program. And then $3.8 million is RA allocations, and those are things like human resources and general counsel, IS, and those sorts of things. Our salaries are actually flat to last year at 3%. And then we have $500,000 for other budgeted services, and then some money for contracted services, like those are services with consultants or things like that. Moving on to contracted bus, TransitLink, and van pool. So we're shifting away from the general fund here. Now these are primarily funded by MVEST, as well as $6 million in sales tax. That is going towards Metro Move, or I'm sorry, for microtransit, the $6 million for microtransit. $1.4 million of federal funding. That is for MnDOT, that comes from MnDOT for 5311 rural service, a grant through them. And again, 92% of expenses are transit provider expenses. $1.1 million is salary and benefits, and then the rest is some in the other category, which is just kind of general overhead, as well as the RA allocation. Let's see, just a couple of things to note. So in fixed route, we're seeing higher provider expenditures, 24% increase over 2025, but this is largely due to our implementation as well of Network Now, and about $4.3 million of that 6.5 is Network Now implementation. Van pool, we're anticipating some modest growth in 2026. There are currently 52 van pools operating. The 2026 budget has 58 van pools right now, or in the 25 budget, we had budgeted for 49. So our actuals for this year are up slightly. So anticipating that that may grow, especially with the return to office that we're seeing. And then finally, in Transit Link, higher provider expenditures are the majority of that, 59% increase, and the bulk of that is in microtransit. Again, that is a relatively small budget, so we had 2 zones added last year, so there's 5 total now, so operating those additional zones. And then moving on, here's a couple of highlights from planning. The Imagine 2050 was adopted this year, so a lot of the work in 2026 will be implementing the work in the development guide and continuing to focus on updates to the transportation policy plan. We'll also be finalizing the regional solicitation evaluation to prepare for the 2026 solicitation funding cycle. So folks are starting work on that now. I know some of you know that we are getting a new grants management system, and so one of the big drivers for that system and the timing for that system was to be ready in time for the 2026 solicitation, so we're excited about that. And then a number of continued planning studies that you can see listed out there. I won't read through all of them, but a lot of great work happening on the planning side. So then just a little bit deeper dive into planning in the preliminary budget for planning and pass-through. So 8% increase that we're seeing on the planning side, 14.9 million compared to 13.8 million last year. This is driven primarily by salary increases and then the cost allocations from the regional administration. Pass-through funding, so this is the STP pass-through. It's a 6% increase as of right now. $71.4 million compared to $67.2 in 2025. The bulk of that is the $54.3 million in MVEST that will go to the suburban transit providers, and then we have $17.1 million in sales tax. But this number is going to change as we move forward with the transit funding allocation policy. And so there are a couple other inputs into that formula that are not in the 2026 budget, but will be after those move through committee. I think the plan is, what's that?
Next time.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Yep, September. Well, next meeting here, and then I think full council in September. So once we have those things finalized, those are things that will show up in either the public comment version of the budget or the final budget at the end of the year before we are adopted. So let's see, I think, here's just planning, operating revenue and expenses. I might have gotten ahead of myself a little bit there. No. So planning, again, here you can see federal funding that is from the Consolidated Planning Grant as well as MVEST, a small portion of regional sales tax that is allocated to the Midtown Greenway study, and then a small use of reserves. Biggest chunks of expenses are for salary and benefits for our folks to do the work. Charles's salaries out of there, part of mine, grant staff, and then all of the planners as well. And then regional allocation, and then consulting fees for the various studies and other types of work that are happening in planning. And that concludes my slides. So if there's any questions, we can stand for.
All right, any questions? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you for this. First of all, it is great that we don't have dire budgets coming before us. For the new people, we always called it the fiscal cliff that we, and Deb Barber can give a TED Talk or college level 4,000 on that.
I used to carry spreadsheets for everyone.
Right. So the game changers are, of course, Metro Mobility now being taken over the state. That's major. We used to have to do that, so it's very important service, but very expensive, and they recognized that this 1 year by 1 year just wasn't sustainable, risking all of that service and for their constituents. Again, it was 2023 that quarter-cent sales tax went in place, 83% coming to Met Council, 17% going to the county is another game changer for us. And then that was coinciding with Network Now. So thank you to the leadership on our staff that recognized coming out of COVID, the whole world was changing rapidly. We called it Network, what was it called?
Next.
Network Next. I knew there was a, yes, but there was a real recognition, and I want to thank Charles, all of you, of course, but Charles and his team for really leaning on that. Cole was part of others, sorry, I'm calling names, but it was super important. It was a game changer again for us that is showing up today, because we're right-sizing the region, as the chair would say. And while it might, we talked about cutting routes tonight in some of our comments, but we expanded service. So that was all happening at the same time that was being allowed. Trip agents was another big one. How long, Madam Chair, had we gone to the legislature asking for that authority?
A very long time.
Long time. So we got that, which is why when we vote tonight on these major contracts, that's a huge win for us, because people are needed on the system, so that's going across public safety. I would say there's HR support coming in for across the council, but especially being seen in transportation and MTS, because you can't hire people if you don't have the right people in HR to support you in that endeavor. Technology we voted on tonight, and we're voting on it in management too, that's huge. And then, of course, contracts and incentives, which are really important. We have union workers here and other workers here, and they need to be paid what they're worth. And we need people that will stick with us, right? So that's part of keeping good people in good place. And then I just thank you for that placeholder for our suburban transit providers, and that'll be coming back because that's still in conversation with those folks. And so I'm just really grateful for all the hard work and for the perseverance of our chair and everybody on the team to get us to where we are today. And it doesn't mean that things are easy, but it means that things are probable and possible and happening. So thank you.
All right, additional questions, comments? I say my only note is you really can see the impact of the transportation bill and the sales tax in everything in this presentation. And the goal of that was to increase access and improve experience, and that was sort of the theme of our whole meeting tonight. So, all right, any final words? All right, thank you. If you have questions, please reach out to Heather and Kristen, and with that, we can be adjourned.
We're back.